The morning of June 15, 1942 began like any other combat patrol over the Solomon Islands, until Lieutenant Commander James "Thunder" Morrison watched a formation of 6 F4F Wildcats execute a maneuver that would revolutionize Pacific air combat forever. What appeared to be a tactical retreat transformed into a devastating ambush that left 12 veteran Japanese Zero fighters burning in the ocean below. Within minutes, the entire foundation of naval aviation doctrine would crumble, and the hunters would become the hunted in ways that neither side could have anticipated. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The pre-dawn darkness over Henderson Field carried the familiar weight of impending combat. Ground crews moved with practiced efficiency across the steel planking of the airstrip, their silhouettes illuminated by the brief flashes of welding torches and the steady glow of maintenance lights. The humid air of Guadalcanal mixed the scents of aviation fuel, hot metal, and the perpetual dampness of tropical vegetation that surrounded the American stronghold. Lieutenant Commander James Morrison stood before a weathered briefing board, studying reconnaissance photographs that had arrived during the night. The images revealed a formation of Japanese aircraft approaching from the northwest, their heading and altitude suggesting another attempt to neutralize American air operations in the Solomon Islands. Morrison had witnessed similar attacks throughout the summer of 1942, each one demonstrating the exceptional skill and aggressive tactics that had made Japanese naval aviation legendary throughout the Pacific theater. Morrison possessed the rare combination of theoretical knowledge and practical experience that defined exceptional combat leaders. His background included advanced aeronautical engineering studies at the Naval Academy, followed by flight training that emphasized both individual combat skills and formation tactics. However, his most valuable education had occurred during the previous 6 months of continuous combat operations, where academic theories encountered the brutal realities of aerial warfare against the world's most experienced naval aviators. The approaching Japanese formation represented far more than routine enemy contact. Intelligence reports indicated that these pilots belonged to elite carrier-based squadrons that had participated in the Pearl Harbor attack, the conquest of the Dutch East Indies, and the destruction of Allied air power throughout Southeast Asia. Their aircraft, the legendary Mitsubishi A-6M0 fighters, had achieved mythical status for their exceptional maneuverability, extended range, and combat record that remained virtually unblemished after 8 months of Pacific warfare. American pilots had learned to respect the Zero's capabilities through painful experience. The Japanese fighter could outmaneuver any Allied aircraft in traditional dogfighting scenarios, climb faster than contemporary American fighters, and maintain combat effectiveness at altitudes where other aircraft struggled to operate efficiently. More significantly, Zero pilots had developed combat tactics that maximized their aircraft's advantages while exploiting the perceived weaknesses of heavier American fighters, like the F4F Wildcat. Morrison understood that conventional tactical approaches would result in predictable outcomes when American Wildcats engaged veteran Zero pilots. The Japanese would initiate combat at their preferred altitude and maneuvering speed, using superior agility to position themselves for attacking passes that American pilots could neither avoid nor effectively counter. Previous encounters had demonstrated that attempting to match Zero performance in traditional aerial combat resulted in devastating losses that the United States could not sustain, while simultaneously fighting a global war on multiple fronts. The strategic situation surrounding Henderson Field reflected broader challenges facing American forces throughout the Pacific theater. Following the devastating losses at Pearl Harbor and the subsequent Japanese advance across Southeast Asia and the Central Pacific, the United States Navy found itself defending positions with equipment and tactics that had proven inadequate against experienced enemy forces operating with superior aircraft and time-tested combat doctrines. American industrial capacity promised eventual numerical superiority, but summer 1942 represented a critical period where outcomes depended more on tactical innovation than material advantages. The pilots defending Henderson Field carried responsibility for maintaining American presence in the Solomon Islands, while developing combat methods that could neutralize Japanese advantages and create opportunities for eventual counteroffensive operations. Morrison had spent countless hours analyzing combat reports from previous engagements, searching for patterns that might reveal vulnerabilities in Japanese tactical approaches. His engineering background enabled him to understand aircraft performance characteristics in ways that pure pilots might miss, while his combat experience provided practical insights into how theoretical advantages translated into battlefield effectiveness. The breakthrough insight had emerged during a late-night analysis session 3 weeks earlier. Morrison realized that American attempts to match Japanese aircraft in their areas of superiority represented fundamentally flawed strategic thinking. Instead of competing directly with zero maneuverability and climb rate, American tactics should exploit areas where Wildcat performance exceeded Japanese capabilities while avoiding prolonged engagements that favored enemy strengths. The F4F Wildcat possessed characteristics that could be transformed into tactical advantages through appropriate employment methods. The American fighter featured superior diving speed, heavier armament, and robust construction that enabled it to absorb battle damage that would destroy lighter Japanese aircraft. Additionally, Wildcat pilots operated with radar guidance and communication systems that provided situational awareness advantages that traditional dogfighting tactics failed to exploit effectively. Morrison began developing tactical concepts that treated aerial combat as engineering problems requiring systematic solutions rather than contests of individual pilot skill and aircraft maneuverability. His approach emphasized coordinated team tactics that maximized American technological advantages while minimizing exposure to areas where Japanese forces held clear superiority. The new tactics centered on disciplined execution of high-speed attacking passes, followed by immediate withdrawal to advantageous positions for subsequent attacks. Rather than remaining engaged in maneuvering combat where Zeros excelled, Wildcat formations would strike decisively and withdraw before Japanese pilots could respond effectively. The approach required exceptional coordination, precise timing, and the psychological discipline to resist the natural impulse to remain engaged with enemy aircraft. Morrison's tactical innovation represented more than procedural modifications to existing combat doctrine. The hit-and-run approach demanded fundamental changes in pilot training, formation organization, and mission planning that challenged established assumptions about the nature of aerial combat. Success required pilots to prioritize tactical discipline over individual heroics, team coordination over personal glory, and strategic patience over immediate gratification. The psychological challenges proved as significant as the technical requirements. American pilots had been trained in traditions that emphasized aggressive pursuit of enemy aircraft and decisive resolution of aerial engagements through superior piloting skill. Morrison's tactics required suppressing these instincts in favor of calculated approaches that might appear defensive or even cowardly to observers unfamiliar with the strategic reasoning behind the methodological changes. Implementing the new tactics required careful selection of pilots who possessed both the technical skills necessary for precise execution and the temperamental characteristics needed for disciplined adherence to unconventional approaches. Morrison identified a core group of experienced pilots who had demonstrated exceptional judgment under combat stress while maintaining the flexibility needed to adapt their fighting methods to radically different tactical concepts. Lieutenant Robert "Snake" Hartwell emerged as Morrison's primary tactical deputy, bringing extensive experience in formation flying and an analytical mind that could translate theoretical concepts into practical operational procedures. Hartwell had participated in some of the most challenging aerial combats of early 1942, developing intimate understanding of Zero capabilities while maintaining the objectivity needed to recognize that American tactical responses required fundamental revision rather than incremental improvement. Ensign Michael "Ghost" Patterson represented the new generation of American naval aviators who had trained specifically for Pacific combat conditions. Patterson possessed exceptional gunnery skills and demonstrated the precise flying abilities necessary for successful execution of hit-and-run tactics. More importantly, he displayed the psychological makeup needed to maintain tactical discipline during the stress and confusion of aerial combat. The tactical development process required extensive practice sessions that simulated combat conditions, while allowing pilots to master the coordination and timing essential for successful implementation of the new approaches. Morrison established training protocols that emphasized repetitive execution of tactical sequences until they became instinctive reactions, rather than conscious decisions requiring mental processing during combat stress. Morning briefings became educational sessions where pilots analyzed combat reports, studied aircraft performance data, and discussed tactical modifications based on operational experience. Morrison encouraged intellectual engagement with tactical problems, recognizing that pilots who understood the reasoning behind tactical innovations would execute them more effectively than those who merely followed prescribed procedures without comprehending their strategic significance. The intelligence reports arriving on June 15 indicated that the approaching Japanese formation would provide the first comprehensive test of Morrison's tactical innovations under actual combat conditions. The enemy force included veteran pilots flying well-maintained aircraft, representing exactly the type of opposition that had previously dominated aerial combat throughout the Pacific Theater. Morrison assembled his pilots for the final briefing before launch, reviewing tactical assignments and emphasizing the critical importance of disciplined execution during the coming engagement. The success or failure of the new tactics would influence American air combat doctrine throughout the Pacific War, making this morning's mission far more significant than routine defensive patrol operations. The briefing room atmosphere reflected the tension that accompanied major tactical experiments under combat conditions. Pilots understood that they were participating in potentially revolutionary changes to American naval aviation, while simultaneously defending positions essential to maintaining Allied presence in the Solomon Islands. The dual pressures of tactical innovation and strategic necessity created psychological stress that demanded exceptional leadership and clear communication of objectives and expectations. Morrison concluded the briefing by addressing the broader significance of their mission beyond immediate tactical outcomes. The pilots defending Henderson Field represented American determination to develop solutions to seemingly insurmountable challenges, while demonstrating that innovation and adaptation could overcome initial disadvantages in equipment and experience. As dawn light began illuminating the eastern horizon, ground crews completed final preparations for aircraft launch. The F4F Wildcats sat ready for combat, their engines warmed and weapons systems armed for the engagement that would determine whether American tactical innovation could neutralize Japanese aerial superiority in the Pacific Theater. The morning of June 15, 1942 would be remembered as the day when American naval aviation discovered that tactical revolution could emerge from careful analysis, systematic preparation, and the courage to abandon conventional approaches in favor of innovative solutions to seemingly impossible challenges. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The first light of dawn revealed Henderson Field as more than an airstrip carved from tropical wilderness. It had become an advanced laboratory where American military aviation evolved under the relentless pressure of combat necessity. Every morning brought new lessons written in the language of victory and defeat, teaching truths that no peacetime training exercise could ever impart to pilots who were learning that survival demanded constant adaptation to an enemy that grew more cunning with each encounter. Lieutenant Commander Morrison stood at the edge of the airfield, watching ground crews complete their methodical preparations for what would become the most significant tactical experiment in Pacific naval aviation history. The humid air carried the familiar mixture of aviation fuel, lubricating oil, and the perpetual dampness of tropical vegetation that surrounded this American outpost deep in contested territory, where every day of operation represented a strategic victory against Japanese attempts to eliminate Allied presence in the Solomon Islands. The evolution of American tactical thinking at Henderson Field reflected broader patterns of military innovation that emerged when institutional doctrine encountered battlefield realities that demanded immediate adaptation or assured destruction. Morrison had observed this process accelerating throughout the summer of 1942, as pilots who arrived with textbook knowledge of aerial combat discovered that Japanese opponents possessed capabilities and tactics that rendered conventional American approaches not merely ineffective but actively suicidal. Combat experience had taught Morrison that warfare served as the ultimate educational system, providing lessons with immediate consequences that eliminated any possibility of theoretical debate about tactical effectiveness. Pilots who failed to learn quickly enough were removed from the classroom permanently, creating an environment where intellectual flexibility and adaptive thinking became essential survival skills rather than academic exercises. The systematic analysis of combat results had become Morrison's primary method for developing tactical innovations that could exploit Japanese weaknesses, while avoiding areas where enemy forces maintained clear advantages. Each engagement provided data points that contributed to his growing understanding of how aircraft performance characteristics translated into tactical opportunities under specific operational conditions. Morrison's engineering background enabled him to interpret combat data through analytical frameworks that many pure pilots might miss, recognizing patterns in aircraft behavior, weapon effectiveness, and tactical outcomes that revealed underlying principles governing aerial combat success. His approach treated dogfighting as an applied science, where systematic observation and logical analysis could generate predictable improvements in combat effectiveness. The development process required careful documentation of engagement results, including detailed analysis of altitude effects on aircraft performance, ammunition expenditure rates during different types of combat maneuvers, fuel consumption patterns associated with various tactical approaches, and pilot fatigue factors that influence decision-making accuracy during extended combat operations. Lieutenant Robert Hartwell had emerged as Morrison's primary collaborator in transforming raw combat experience into refined tactical concepts that could be taught to newly arrived pilots and implemented consistently across different combat situations. Hartwell possessed the rare combination of exceptional flying skills and analytical intelligence necessary for translating theoretical improvements into practical operational procedures. The Tactical Development Laboratory at Henderson Field operated under conditions that would have been impossible to replicate in peacetime training environments. Real combat provided immediate feedback on tactical effectiveness, while the continuous presence of experienced Japanese opponents ensured that American innovations faced the highest possible level of professional military opposition. Hartwell had begun systematically interviewing pilots after each combat mission, collecting detailed accounts of tactical sequences, enemy responses, and outcome factors that contributed to successful or unsuccessful engagement results. These debriefing sessions provided raw material for tactical refinement that gradually improved American combat effectiveness through incremental adjustments to formation procedures, engagement timing, and withdrawal protocols. The interview process revealed significant variations in individual pilot capabilities that influenced tactical planning and mission assignment decisions. Some aviators demonstrated exceptional gunnery skills that made them ideal for concentrated attack roles, while others possessed superior situational awareness that qualified them for formation leadership positions during complex tactical maneuvers. Morrison recognized that successful implementation of innovative tactics required matching pilot assignments to individual strengths, while compensating for personal limitations through coordinated team approaches that distributed tactical responsibilities among formation members according to their specific capabilities and experience levels. Ensign Michael Patterson had distinguished himself through exceptional performance during practice sessions that simulated the precise timing and coordination requirements essential for successful hit-and-run tactics. Patterson possessed the temperamental characteristics necessary for maintaining tactical discipline under combat stress, while executing complex maneuvers that required absolute precision in formation positioning and engagement timing. The training program developed at Henderson Field emphasized repetitive practice of specific tactical sequences until they became instinctive responses that could be executed effectively during the confusion and stress of actual combat conditions. Morrison understood that complex tactical innovations could only succeed if pilots could implement them without conscious thought processes that might be disrupted by the psychological pressures of aerial combat. Practice sessions incorporated realistic combat scenarios that tested pilot reactions to unexpected developments, equipment malfunctions, and tactical complications that might require immediate adaptation of planned procedures. These exercises revealed individual pilot characteristics that influenced tactical role assignments and provided opportunities for refinement of standard operating procedures. The psychological preparation for implementing revolutionary tactics proved as challenging as the technical training requirements. American pilots had been conditioned through cultural background and military training to engage enemies directly and pursue decisive victory through aggressive action. Morrison's hit-and-run approach demanded suppressing these natural instincts in favor of calculated restraint that might appear defensive to observers unfamiliar with the strategic reasoning behind the tactical modifications. Morrison addressed these psychological challenges through comprehensive educational programs that explained the analytical foundation supporting tactical innovations. Pilots who understood the technical reasoning behind tactical changes proved more willing to suppress natural aggressive impulses in favor of disciplined execution of coordinated procedures that maximized formation effectiveness rather than individual combat achievements. The educational approach included detailed analysis of Japanese tactical methods, aircraft capabilities, and pilot training backgrounds that enabled American aviators to understand their opponents as professional military personnel operating sophisticated equipment according to proven tactical doctrines rather than mysterious enemies whose success resulted from supernatural or incomprehensible factors. Combat intelligence gathering had become an essential component of tactical development at Henderson Field, with pilots systematically observing and reporting Japanese tactical innovations, formation modifications, and equipment changes that might require corresponding adjustments to American counter-tactics. This intelligence collection created a continuous feedback loop between tactical development and operational implementation that ensured American methods remained current with evolving enemy capabilities. The intelligence analysis revealed that Japanese pilots were also adapting their tactics in response to American innovations, creating a dynamic tactical environment where both sides continuously modified their approaches based on combat results and observed enemy developments. This tactical evolution demanded flexibility and adaptability from American pilots, who could no longer rely on standard procedures, but must be prepared to implement tactical modifications during active combat operations. Morrison's tactical development process had identified several key principles that appeared to govern successful aerial combat regardless of specific aircraft types or operational circumstances. These principles included the importance of maintaining tactical initiative through careful engagement planning, the advantages of coordinated formation tactics over individual combat methods, and the critical significance of situational awareness in determining engagement outcomes. The principle of tactical initiative emphasized the advantages gained by forces that could dictate engagement terms, rather than merely responding to enemy actions. Morrison's hit-and-run tactics were specifically designed to seize and maintain initiative through systematic exploitation of American technological advantages, while avoiding tactical situations where Japanese forces could impose their preferred combat conditions. Coordinated formation tactics represented a fundamental departure from traditional American approaches that emphasized individual pilot skills and aircraft performance characteristics. Morrison's innovations treated aerial combat as team activities, where collective effectiveness exceeded the sum of individual capabilities through systematic mutual support and tactical specialization among formation members. Situational awareness had emerged as perhaps the most critical factor determining combat success, with pilots who maintained comprehensive understanding of tactical developments consistently achieving superior results compared to aviators who focused narrowly on immediate threats or opportunities. Morrison's tactics incorporated systematic procedures for information sharing and tactical coordination that enhanced formation-wide situational awareness. The technological integration aspects of tactical development included optimization of radio communication procedures, radar coordination protocols, and ground control integration methods that maximized American advantages in command and control capabilities. These technological factors provided American formations with coordination capabilities that Japanese forces could not match with their existing equipment and operational procedures. Equipment modifications had become another focus area for tactical development, with mechanics and pilots collaborating to improve aircraft performance characteristics that supported specific tactical requirements. These modifications included armament adjustments, fuel system optimizations, and radio equipment enhancements that increased tactical effectiveness without requiring major industrial modifications to basic aircraft designs. The fuel system modifications proved particularly important for hit-and-run tactics that required precise calculation of engagement duration and withdrawal timing to ensure adequate reserves for safe return to base. Morrison had worked with maintenance personnel to develop fuel management procedures that balanced tactical flexibility with operational safety requirements. Armament modifications focused on optimizing weapon effectiveness during the brief, intense engagement periods characteristic of hit-and-run tactics. These changes included ammunition type selection, gun harmonization adjustments, and firing control modifications that maximized destructive potential during limited firing opportunities. Radio equipment enhancements improved formation coordination capabilities that were essential for successful execution of complex tactical maneuvers, requiring precise timing and mutual support among multiple aircraft. These communication improvements enabled real-time tactical adjustments based on changing combat conditions or unexpected enemy responses. the maintenance and logistics considerations supporting tactical innovations had required significant adaptations to standard operating procedures at Henderson Field. Ground crews developed specialized maintenance protocols that addressed the unique stress patterns imposed on aircraft systems by hit-and-run tactics, ensuring operational readiness despite intensive combat utilization. Weather analysis had become increasingly sophisticated as Morrison recognized that atmospheric conditions significantly influenced the effectiveness of different tactical approaches. Combat scheduling and tactical planning now incorporated detailed meteorological forecasts that identified optimal conditions for implementing specific tactical procedures. The broader strategic context surrounding tactical development at Henderson Field emphasized the critical importance of developing effective methods for countering Japanese aerial superiority throughout the Pacific theater. American forces at multiple locations faced similar challenges, making the tactical experiments conducted in the Solomon Islands potentially decisive for the entire American war effort against Japan. As the morning of June 15 progressed toward the crucial test of American tactical innovations, Morrison carried the accumulated weight of months of systematic analysis, careful preparation, and innovative thinking that had transformed Henderson Field from a defensive outpost into a center of military innovation that would influence aerial combat doctrine for generations of future aviators. The engines of 6 F4F Wildcat fighters thundered to life in the pre-dawn darkness of Henderson Field, their synchronized roar announcing that months of theoretical preparation and tactical innovation were about to face the ultimate validation of actual combat against the most experienced naval aviators in the world. Lieutenant Commander Morrison felt the familiar weight of command responsibility settle across his shoulders as he prepared to lead his formation into an engagement that would determine whether American tactical ingenuity could overcome the accumulated advantages that Japanese forces had built through 8 months of uninterrupted Pacific conquest. The radar operators in Henderson Field's control center had been tracking the approaching Japanese formation for the past 20 minutes, providing continuous updates on enemy strength, altitude, and heading that confirmed intelligence predictions about the composition and intentions of the incoming strike force. The electronic surveillance revealed 12 Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters maintaining tight formation discipline while approaching from the northwest at an altitude that suggested preparation for high-speed diving attacks against American ground installations. Morrison's tactical analysis had anticipated this exact scenario during months of careful study of Japanese operational patterns and combat methodologies. Enemy formations typically approached American positions at high altitude to maximize their aircraft's superior climb rate and maneuverability advantages, while positioning themselves for devastating attacking passes that had proven devastatingly effective against conventional Allied defensive tactics throughout the Pacific theater. The psychological pressure of leading the first comprehensive test of revolutionary tactical concepts under actual combat conditions created mental demands that no amount of peacetime training could adequately prepare commanders to handle effectively. Morrison understood that the success or failure of this morning's engagement would influence American aerial combat doctrine throughout the remainder of the Pacific War, while simultaneously determining whether his pilots would survive to implement the tactical innovations they had worked so hard to develop. Lieutenant Robert Hartwell occupied the number 2 position in Morrison's formation, his aircraft positioned precisely according to the tactical spacing requirements that months of practice had refined to mathematical precision. Hartwell's role extended beyond mere formation flying to include tactical coordination responsibilities that would prove essential during the complex engagement sequences that successful implementation of hit-and-run tactics demanded from every participating pilot. The formation takeoff proceeded with mechanical precision that reflected hundreds of hours of practice under various weather conditions and operational scenarios. Each pilot executed his assigned procedures with the automatic competence that emerged from systematic training designed to eliminate conscious decision-making processes that might prove too slow during the rapid tactical developments characteristic of aerial combat at the highest levels of professional military competition. Ensign Michael Patterson maintained his assigned position in the formation with the steady precision that had distinguished his performance throughout the training program. Patterson represented the new generation of American naval aviators who had learned their combat skills specifically for Pacific theater conditions, developing tactical understanding and technical proficiency that differed significantly from pilots educated according to pre-war doctrines that emphasized individual combat prowess over coordinated formation tactics. The communication protocols that supported Morrison's tactical system enabled real-time coordination between aircraft and ground-based controllers in ways that provided American formations with situational awareness advantages that Japanese forces could neither anticipate nor effectively counter with their existing equipment and operational procedures. Radio transmissions between Henderson Field Control Center and the climbing Wildcat formation established the information sharing network that would prove crucial during the coming engagement. Ground control radar tracking confirmed that the Japanese formation had maintained its predicted approach pattern, providing Morrison with precise intelligence about enemy altitude, airspeed, and tactical positioning that enabled final adjustments to his own formation's positioning and engagement timing. The electronic surveillance capabilities available to American forces represented technological advantages that could compensate for numerical or performance disadvantages in aircraft and pilot experience. Morrison's tactical plan required his formation to position itself at a specific altitude and geographic location that would maximize the effectiveness of high-speed diving attacks, while maintaining sufficient altitude advantage to execute successful withdrawal maneuvers after the initial engagement sequence. The positioning calculations demanded precise navigation and formation coordination that left no margin for error in execution timing or tactical spacing. The climbing phase of the mission provided final opportunities for pilots to review their tactical assignments and verify aircraft systems' readiness for the demanding flight profiles that hit-and-run tactics would require during the engagement sequence. Each pilot conducted systematic checks of weapons systems, fuel reserves, radio equipment, and flight instruments, while maintaining formation discipline essential for coordinated tactical execution. Weather conditions remained ideal for implementing the experimental tactics, with clear visibility and stable atmospheric conditions that would allow precise execution of high-speed maneuvers while providing maximum effectiveness for American radar operators, tracking both friendly and enemy formations throughout the engagement area. The favorable environmental factors eliminated potential complications that might interfere with the first comprehensive test of revolutionary tactical concepts. Intelligence updates from Henderson Field Control confirmed that the Japanese formation had begun its final approach phase, with enemy aircraft maintaining the altitude and heading that Morrison's tactical analysis had predicted based on previous Japanese operational patterns observed during earlier engagements in the Solomon Islands area. The predictability of enemy tactics provided American forces with strategic advantages that could be exploited through careful timing and positioning of defensive responses. Morrison reviewed his formation's tactical readiness one final time as they approached the predetermined engagement area, where months of preparation would face validation against the brutal realities of aerial combat at the highest levels of professional military competition. Each pilot understood his specific role in the coordinated tactical sequence that would determine whether American innovation could overcome Japanese experience and aircraft performance advantages. The responsibility of tactical leadership during revolutionary military innovations carried psychological burdens that extended far beyond individual survival considerations. Morrison understood that his decisions during the coming engagement would influence the development of American aerial combat doctrine throughout the remainder of the Pacific War, while simultaneously determining whether the pilots who had trusted his tactical theories would survive to continue serving their country in future operations. Hartwell's position as tactical deputy required him to monitor formation discipline while preparing to assume command responsibilities if Morrison's aircraft suffered battle damage or mechanical failure during the engagement sequence. The succession planning reflected systematic attention to contingency scenarios that could disrupt tactical coordination during the critical phases of combat, when individual pilot actions determined collective formation effectiveness. Patterson's role in the formation emphasized his exceptional gunnery skills and demonstrated ability to maintain tactical discipline under combat stress. His assignment reflected Morrison's understanding that successful implementation of hit-and-run tactics required careful matching of individual pilot capabilities with specific tactical responsibilities that maximized formation effectiveness, while compensating for personal limitations through coordinated team approaches. The fuel management calculations that supported extended combat operations had been refined through months of testing under various operational scenarios and flight profiles. Morrison's tactical system required precise calculation of engagement duration and withdrawal timing to ensure adequate reserves for safe return to base, while maintaining sufficient tactical flexibility to respond to unexpected enemy actions or changing combat conditions. Ammunition loadout selections reflected tactical requirements for maximum effectiveness during brief, intense engagement periods characteristic of hit-and-run methods. Each aircraft carried carefully selected combinations of ammunition types optimized for different target scenarios, while maintaining weight and balance configurations that preserved aircraft performance characteristics essential for successful tactical execution. Radio communication protocols had been simplified and standardized to enable rapid information sharing during combat conditions where excessive radio chatter could compromise tactical coordination, while providing enemy forces with intelligence about American formation positions and tactical intentions. The communication procedures balanced coordination requirements with operational security considerations. The radar tracking information available to Morrison's formation provided unprecedented situational awareness compared to traditional aerial combat scenarios where pilots relied primarily on visual observation for tactical intelligence. The electronic surveillance capabilities enabled tactical planning and execution methods that would have been impossible without real-time intelligence about enemy formation positions, headings, and tactical developments. Morrison's engineering background enabled him to interpret aircraft performance data in ways that many pilots might miss, recognizing optimization opportunities that could provide tactical advantages during specific phases of the engagement sequence. His analytical approach to combat problems combined theoretical knowledge with practical experience to generate solutions that maximized aircraft capabilities, while minimizing exposure to enemy advantages. The tactical innovation process at Henderson Field had benefited from systematic analysis of combat results from previous engagements throughout the Pacific Theater, providing data foundations that enabled Morrison to develop solutions based on empirical evidence rather than theoretical speculation. The scientific approach to tactical development reflected his understanding that warfare demanded systematic problem-solving methods rather than reliance on individual heroics or traditional approaches. Formation positioning requirements for successful hit-and-run tactics demanded precision that exceeded normal formation flying standards, with aircraft spacing and altitude differentials calculated to optimize mutual support capabilities, while maximizing individual pilot effectiveness during high-speed engagement sequences. The tactical geometry reflected months of analysis and testing that had identified optimal configurations for specific combat scenarios. The psychological preparation that preceded implementation of revolutionary tactics included systematic mental conditioning, designed to help pilots maintain tactical discipline during combat stress, while suppressing natural aggressive instincts that might interfere with coordinated execution of complex maneuvers, requiring absolute precision in timing and formation positioning. As Morrison's formation approached the engagement area where Japanese fighters would soon appear, the weight of months of preparation, analysis, and innovation focused into the crucial moments when theoretical concepts would face ultimate validation against experienced enemy forces, operating proven tactical methods with superior aircraft performance characteristics. The morning of June 15, 1942 had arrived at the moment when American naval aviation would discover whether systematic analysis and innovative thinking could overcome the accumulated advantages that Japanese forces had built through months of successful combat operations throughout the Pacific Theater. The ultimate test was about to begin. The morning sky over the Solomon Islands transformed into an arena where 8 months of Japanese aerial dominance would face its first systematic challenge from American tactical innovation. Lieutenant Commander Morrison's formation of 6 F4F Wildcats maintained perfect positioning at 19,000 feet, as Henderson Field radar controllers provided final intelligence updates about the approaching enemy formation. 12 veteran Japanese Zero fighters, their polished aluminum surfaces gleaming in the tropical sunlight, advanced with the confident precision that had characterized Imperial Navy aviation throughout its unprecedented string of Pacific victories. Morrison felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded major combat engagements, but underneath the physiological response lay a deeper current of analytical calm that reflected months of systematic preparation for this exact scenario. Every aspect of the approaching encounter had been studied, analyzed, and rehearsed until the tactical responses had become instinctive reactions rather than conscious decisions, requiring mental processing during the stress and confusion of aerial combat at its highest levels. The Japanese formation leader, Commander Hiroshi Yamamoto, possessed combat credentials that included participation in the Pearl Harbor attack, the conquest of the Philippines, and the destruction of Allied air power throughout the Dutch East Indies. Yamamoto had accumulated over 300 combat hours in Zero fighters, developing tactical expertise through successful engagements against every type of Allied aircraft operating in the Pacific theater. His confidence reflected not arrogance but empirical evidence, derived from consistent victory against opponents who had attempted every conventional tactical approach to countering Japanese aerial superiority. Yamamoto's tactical assessment of the approaching American formation revealed nothing unusual about their positioning or apparent intentions. 6 F4F Wildcats maintained standard defensive formation spacing at an altitude that suggested preparation for conventional maneuvering combat where Japanese aircraft advantages in climb rate, turning radius, and operational ceiling would provide decisive tactical superiority. The Americans appeared to be implementing exactly the same approaches that had resulted in devastating losses throughout 8 months of Pacific air combat. Lieutenant Robert Hartwell monitored his engine instruments, while maintaining precise formation position relative to Morrison's led aircraft. The weeks of intensive training had developed formation flying skills that exceeded peacetime standards, with pilots able to maintain tactical spacing within margins measured in feet, rather than the broader tolerances acceptable during routine operations. The precision reflected understanding that successful implementation of hit-and-run tactics demanded coordination that eliminated any possibility of formation disruption during the critical phases of tactical execution. The radar intelligence flowing from Henderson Field revealed that the Japanese formation had begun its initial tactical deployment, with aircraft separating into attacking elements that would engage American defenders from multiple directions simultaneously. This tactical approach had proven devastatingly effective throughout previous encounters, overwhelming Allied pilots with more threats than could be addressed through individual defensive reactions, while exploiting the superior maneuverability that enabled Zero fighters to maintain offensive initiative throughout extended engagements. Morrison's tactical response to the developing enemy deployment differed fundamentally from conventional American defensive approaches that attempted to match Japanese tactical methods through individual combat skills and aircraft performance characteristics. Instead of accepting the maneuvering combat that Japanese pilots preferred, Morrison's formation would impose tactical conditions that maximized American advantages, while avoiding areas where enemy forces maintained clear superiority. The initial contact phase required Morrison's formation to maintain apparent vulnerability, while positioning themselves for the coordinated attack sequence that would demonstrate the effectiveness of systematic tactical innovation against experienced opponents operating proven combat methods. The psychological challenge involved suppressing natural defensive instincts in favor of calculated tactical positioning that might appear passive to observers unfamiliar with the strategic reasoning behind the procedural modifications. Ensign Michael Patterson verified his weapon system status while tracking the approaching Japanese formation through his gun sight. The ammunition loadout had been carefully selected to maximize effectiveness during the brief engagement windows characteristic of hit-and-run tactics, with armor-piercing rounds positioned to achieve maximum destructive potential against enemy aircraft during limited firing opportunities that would determine the success or failure of the entire tactical sequence. The communication protocols supporting Morrison's tactical system enabled real-time coordination adjustments based on enemy formation changes or unexpected tactical developments that might require modification of planned engagement procedures. Radio discipline maintained operational security while providing essential information sharing that enhanced formation-wide situational awareness beyond what individual pilots could achieve through visual observation alone. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.